The third year of Burkina Faso's drought had begun, and residents were moving to the cities in droves to protest water shortages. Into a crisis in politics. While American and French intelligence were planning an operation known as the Water Coup to topple Ibrahim Traoré's administration, nobody was aware of the Blue Belt project that Traoré was working on with a group of Chinese-trained engineers. Thousands of people carrying empty water bottles had congregated in the main square of Ouagadougou, shouting, "We want water." There had not been any adequate rainfall for 3 years. The rivers in Burkina Faso's lakes had dried up, leaving only slender streams visible from the window of the presidential palace. As he observed this display, Ibrahim Traoré's face remained expressionless, but his mind was racing in defense. Beside him, Minister Urango presented the most recent reports. "Mr. President, things are getting worse every day. 5 northern cities have been left completely deserted, and people are either converging on the capital or gathering at the Mali border." Traoré was asked how things are in Mali, and they said that it's better because of the Niger River, but they've also closed their borders and aren't accepting any refugees. Traoré nodded, and the French woman inhaled deeply. Aqua. Water prices have gone up globally once again. A liter of clean water now costs more than a liter of gas, and they only sell it for foreign exchange, not water itself, according to, "They are purchasing our sovereignty with each drop of water, and they want us to submit to a bit more communication," Traoré said in a voice that trembled with repressed wrath. "The world press is attacking us," and Minister Sawado entered Mr. President CNN France 24 on the BBC. They are all discussing the impending humanitarian calamity and government failure. Additional intelligence head Sankara and former Foreign Minister Kabore held a press conference in France where they sought for international assistance to topple the government. The opposition's statements are also being disseminated through overseas channels. "They expect us to leave our people without water and then take out loans to buy this water from them," Traoré said, looking at the map on his desk. "Once blue rivers and lakes were now brown," they said, followed by Sudan and Egypt. His aide then declared, "Mr. President, Dr. Zeta is here and wants to meet with you urgently," indicating that Libya now understands that this is not a coincidence, but rather a strategy. Blue Belt was one of Traoré's most secret undertakings. Only a select few were aware of it. "Let him in," whispered Traoré Adama, as everyone in the room stared at one another in amazement. "Mr. President, when I presented this project to you 2 years ago, you thought it was impossible. But now our first test results have come in," said a resolute-looking engineer in his 30s carrying a leather bag. A 3-dimensional, 3D representation of what was beneath the Sahara was displayed on his tablet. As you can see, at a depth of roughly 400 meters, there is an ancient water basin that, based on our geological estimations, dates back to the last ice age and contains roughly 500 billion cubic meters of water. Upon picking up the tablet, Traoré's eyes widened in shock. If this is accurate, the amount of water could supply Burkina Faso's water demands for a century. That evening, Traoré assembled his closest advisors, Dr. Zeta Intelligence Chief Sankura, Defense Minister Ouedraogo, and Economy Minister Dio, in a signal-proof room located deep beneath the palace. Zeta had finished not only Burkina Faso's, but all of West Africa. All of Zeta's reports and maps were laid out on the table, and he explained that theoretically it would be possible to extract this water reservoir by displaying a geological cross-section. I had previously worked on a project similar to this in China, where the basin was closer to the surface, but the technology was the same. What would the price be? Dio shook his head and said, "We don't have that kind of money in our budget." The IMF and World Bank are already pressuring us, and they're not giving new loans. Dio had estimated that the first phase of the project would cost roughly $2 billion, but the entire project may cost $5 to $6 billion. The Chinese Wedrao proposed that Sankara step in since the Chinese government is aware that funding such a project would put them in direct opposition to the French, particularly at this time when trade disputes are raging, and they don't want to take that chance. Trey glanced at the table's map, which showed that the water basin stretched beneath Burkina Faso's northern region, just below the Sahara Desert. A portion of it also reached into Mali territory. "We can't extract this basin alone," Traoré said, adding that it was politically and financially impossible and that Western powers would stop at nothing to stop it. "Why would they try to prevent it?" asked Zeta, a little naively, since water is a basic necessity for human survival. Traoré gave a sour smile. "What will we do, Mr. President?" questioned Sankara. "If Africa controls its own water resources, the West's greatest weapon is taken away. Water is the new oil water. Scarcity is the greatest control of the new world order." After giving it some serious thought, Traoré said, "We will start the Blue Belt project, but not alone, but together with other countries in the region. With Mali," asked Wedrao in surprise, "our relations with them are at their lowest level. The people are growing more irate every day, and French agents are feeding this rage, and a coup attempt is only a matter of time." "No," Traoré replied, "we'll establish a new partnership with Niger." Chad. The room fell silent as Traoré explained that what he was suggesting was not merely an engineering project, but a regional revolution that would be carried out in phases. Mali Senegal, they all share the same issue of water scarcity and desire to escape Western hegemony. Traoré went on to lay the foundation for the Blue Belt project in Paris, where Africa Desk Chief Philippe Dubois reviewed intelligence from Burkina Faso. First, technical teams worked together, followed by financial planning, and finally, we brought the leaders together. In the meantime, we implemented short-term solutions and gave our people hope. His assistant stated, "Director, we received an interesting signal from Burkina Faso. Last night a long meeting was held in the room beneath the presidential palace. Because a signal blocker was used, we couldn't get the content, but we identified who attended." A tablet that was scanning the list was given to the assistant. Dubois paused at Dr. Adama, a geologist and water engineer, who explained that he had studied in Shanghai for 5 years and worked on the Chinese government's Gobi Desert water projects. His eyes widened with concern when he learned that Traoré was attempting to reach the subterranean water basin in the Sahara. Recent geological research indicates that the basin extends into Burkina Faso territory, sir. Within an hour, high-level officials had gathered at the French Foreign Ministry, where the Foreign Minister, DGSSE Director, Aqua Global CEO, and the Africa Affairs Advisor were seated. If Traoré begins this project, not only will our control in Burkina Faso, but all of West Africa will be jeoparded. Aqua Global's water sales in the area will plummet, according to Dubois. The foreign minister was cautious, saying that an open intervention will result in international reactions, particularly from China and Russia, who will portray this as a new colonial intervention in Africa. According to Dubois, we'll support former Defense Minister Kabore, which will encourage a popular uprising and worsen the water crisis. Our new uranium agreements in Mali and Niger will be jeopardized, so we should speed up the water coup operation, said the DGSSE director. We were waiting for all the opposition to unite to overthrow Traoré, but we can't wait any longer. Pierre Renaud, CEO of Aqua Global, stated that our company may temporarily cut back on water supplies due to technical issues, which will exacerbate the crisis. Precisely, stated Dubois, And keep in mind that the Blue Belt project is a strategic as well as an economic threat. If Traoré initiates it, and it is successful, other African nations will follow suit with schemes of a similar nature. What about the Chinese? When they asked the foreign minister if they were helping the project, he said that there was no direct support yet, but Zeta has good ties to China, so if the project moves forward, China might offer financial and technical support. In that case, our top priority is Zeta stated that we must either neutralize Dubois or purchase him. French intelligence activated its agents in Burkina Faso 2 weeks later at a covert military facility 300 kilometers from Ouagadougou after the discussion concluded with the decision to expedite the water coup operation. Water engineers and geologists from 5 different nations were listening to Traoré, and Dr. Zeta explained the Blue Belt project. Traoré was standing in front of a sizable map that depicted the water basin beneath the Sahara. Since this basin spans national boundaries like rivers, the answer must likewise do so. A Mali water engineer raised his voice. Mr. President, the financial dimension of this project concerns us. Our countries are already struggling with major economic problems. You're right, Traoré replied, but consider that as West African countries we're spending about $10 billion annually on water imports. This money goes directly to Western companies. The Blue Belt project could pay for itself in 5 years. They talked about implementation in phases, including country-specific research, joint technical teams, and alternative funding sources, potentially from the African Development Bank or the BRICS countries. At the end of the day, Traoré spoke to everyone in attendance, saying, "Today, we're taking a historic step here, a step that will change Africa's destiny. We are reclaiming our lives because water is life." At that moment, Intelligence Chief Sankara hurried into the conference room. There is an emergency. Large-scale protests have started in the capital, violence is being reported, and there was an attack on Dr. Zeta's home, he remarked with a troubled expression on his face. My family ... they're safe, he said. Sankara, despite our guards' prompt intervention, they set the home on fire. Traoré recognized the pattern of traditional destabilization measures right once, called off the meeting, and instructed everyone to return to their nations via safe means. They boarded a helicopter back to the capital, where mobs fought in the palace command center's streets, and flames were evident beneath burning government buildings. Dr. Zeta, you'll go to our secret facility at the Mali border since you're too valuable to jeopardize. Defense Minister Urago stated, 2 brigade commanders have defected. Troops from the northern garrison are moving toward the city. The western garrison is still loyal to us. The palace's security is strong, and the presidential guards asked Traoré to be completely honest with you, Mr. President. After reviewing the tactical map, Traoré made the audacious decision to address the country and prepare a live broadcast, Mr. President. This might be extremely dangerous. Be advised. Sankara. You'll disclose where you are, so we must take chances, said. Traoré, the public must be aware of the facts and comprehend the identity of the coup plotters. An hour later, Traoré made an appearance on national television wearing full uniform. My dear citizens, today is a crucial day for our nation, as a group backed by foreign powers is attempting to topple your legitimate government in order to seize control of our most valuable resource, water. I want to tell you the truth. We have found a huge water basin beneath the Sahara Desert that could alleviate water scarcity for not only Burkina Faso, but the entire region, which is why we are being attacked. This explains why a coup is imminent. As Traoré's speech was being broadcast nationwide, troops under General Amora's command were moving toward the presidential palace. However, Traoré's speech had a significant impact on the public on social media, with the hashtag #Bluebelt rapidly spreading. Traoré displayed the map on the table. Our Bluebelt project aims to reach this water basin in cooperation with neighboring countries. It's a project that will free West Africa from water dependency. However, some powers, especially companies like Aqua Global and the government that supports them, are attempting to thwart this project. There are also agents of foreign powers within our army, said Traoré. But the majority of our army consists of patriotic soldiers. I call on them, don't point your weapons at your own people. Don't join the coup plotters. Let's stand together for the future of Burkina Faso, for the Bluebelt project. Unity for Bluebelt, and our water is ours. This is why they want to overthrow us, Traoré said, as he called on soldiers to refuse illegal orders and asked citizens to peacefully resist the coup. His words had an immediate impact, as some advancing soldiers lowered their weapons and refused to leave the palace. Thousands of citizens gathered around the palace, holding banners that read, "They want to overthrow us because they fear the power of the people." By dawn, the coup had collapsed. General Bamoro and Colonel Dop were a prey, and troops under the coup plotters' control had either surrendered or dispersed. 3 months later, a large platform decked out with Burkina Faso flags was set up for a grand ceremony on the edge of the Sahara Desert in northern Burkina Faso, marking the start of the Bluebelt project's first drilling work. Regional leaders and technical teams attended the ceremony. As Traoré spoke on the platform, there was resolve in his eyes. He said, "Today, we're not just starting a drilling operation. We're opening a new page in Africa's journey to independence. Water is life, and now the control of our life is in our own hands." The president of Mali also spoke. "For years, Western powers have exploited our resources, including our oil, gold, diamonds, and now water, which is our most basic need. However, we now say enough. The Bluebelt is not just an engineering project, it is a manifesto of freedom." Dr. Zeta went into the technical details. Traoré symbolically began the first drilling machine, which was supposed to be finished in 5 years. The initial drilling would descend to a depth of 400 meters, and once it reached the water basin, special pumps and pipes would be constructed. After the ceremony, there was a lot of clapping and a hopeful expression on everyone's faces. Traoré and Dr. Zeta were examining the drilling site and gazing at the horizon when Traoré remarked, "What do you think, Zeta, will we succeed?" Zeta grinned and added, "Mr. President, this project is technically feasible and has the backing of the populace. More significantly, we are no longer alone because the whole region is on our side. The West will react harshly to this." Zeta stated that we must be ready, particularly when the water begins to pour. Africa's fight for independence has never been simple, both politically and technically. But this time, it's different because we have knowledge, technology, and most crucially, unity. 6 months after the Bluebelt project began, the first drilling was successful at a depth of 412 meters, reaching the ancient water basin. The first water samples showed promising results, indicating that the water was drinkable and didn't need any treatment. Dr. Zeta was looking at water analyses in the lab when he exclaimed excitedly, "This water is about 10,000 years old, from the last ice age, and the minerals in it are in exactly the balance we need." The first pumps were installed, and water began to flow to the surface. Initially, only small amounts of water were being pumped as the system was being tested. But even this was enough to provide water to small settlements in the area. The project received wide coverage in the international press channels like National Geographic. BBC Al Jazeera described Bluebelt as Africa's water revolution. The initial successes also made financing the project easier. the African Development Bank announced a credit package of $3 billion. The BRICS New Development Bank provided $1 billion for technical equipment. Even some European countries began to give indirect support to the project. However, France and companies like Aqua Global were waging a silent war. Deliveries of critical equipment were delayed, pressure was put on international banks, internal turmoil in Mali was fueled in Burkina Faso. Water scarcity began to gradually decrease. The first pipelines reached the capital Ouagadougou. The city's water reservoirs began to fill. For the first time in years, people didn't have to wait in water queues. When Traoré and Dr. Zeta visited the capital's new water distribution facility, they saw individuals filling their containers with clean water from tankers. They had a relieved look on their faces, which is why we battle for that expression, Traoré said. The balance of power in West Africa has entirely shifted in Burkina Faso 2 years after the Blue Belt project began. At an international water conference, Traoré was the keynote speaker. He stated that water should cease to be a weapon, a means of control, and become the common heritage of humanity. The Blue Belt project demonstrated that this is possible. Mali, Niger, Chad, and Senegal had established a regional union under the name Sahara Water Alliance. The alliance was not limited to water management partnerships. Partnerships were also developed in areas such as economic cooperation, security agreements, and technology transfer. Traoré described Phase 2 plans in a video conference with alliance leaders. When the second phase is finished, our water production will reach 10 million cubic meters per day, which is sufficient to meet everyone in our region's basic water needs. The third phase asked the president of Mali if we could expand agricultural irrigation systems. We can triple our food output if we clear land near the desert's edge for crops. Niger's president stated, "Naturally, I'm worried about the recent actions of the West, particularly the recent coup attempt in Nigeria, which may have something to do with our project." Traoré. The balance of power in the region will drastically shift if Nigeria, the biggest economy in West Africa, joins the Blue Belt. They will work to stop this. The summit concluded with a unified statement from the alliance inviting all of the region's nations to join the Blue Belt project, which was positioned as a platform for economic growth and independence in the initiative's 5th year, in addition to being a way to supply water. At maximum capacity, the Blue Belt was supplying all 5 nations with water drawn from the basin beneath the Sahara. The region's water shortage had been largely resolved when the tray visited the main pumping station in the north for the project's 5th anniversary celebrations. Dr. Zeta gave an explanation of the most recent technical advancements, while massive pumps brought millions of cubic meters of water to the surface daily. 30% less energy is used by the filters we created using innovative nanotechnology, and 80% of the operation is powered by our solar energy systems. Data was displayed on big screens in the station's control room, allowing for real-time monitoring of every pump, pipeline, and distribution point. 5 years ago, Traoré was just a desert. Now, one of Africa's greatest engineering wonders has emerged outside of it. A small city has grown up around the pumping station, and engineers, technicians, workers, and their families now live here. Schools, hospitals, markets, and other facilities have been established. At the conclusion of the visit, Traoré held a press conference saying, "The international media was following the 5th year of Blue Belt with great interest." According to Traoré, the Blue Belt project has demonstrated that Africa is capable of managing its own resources. This serves as a paradigm for all of our natural resources, not only water, oil, gold, diamonds, and cobalt. We've turned a new page and said, "Traoré, now we're talking as equal partners. The colonial days are behind us." A journalist inquired about your connections with Western powers and France, as well as other former colonial nations. Following the press conference, a number of Western businesses, notably Aqua Global, now wish to collaborate with us on equitable conditions. Dr. Zeta and Traoré ascended to the top of the pumping station, but now the vast Sahara Desert was not a barrier. Rather, it was like a friend concealing treasure beneath it. 5 years ago, when we started the first drilling, were you sure we would succeed? Asked Traoré, and Zeta grinned. Technically, I was sure. But politically, to be honest, I didn't think we could go this far. Neither did I, say Traoré. But now I realize that the biggest challenge facing a nation or its citizens is their own incredulousness. Below them, the pumps labored ceaselessly to deliver water to the center of Africa, as the two watched the sun set over the Sahara. The Blue Belt Project became more than just a technical triumph. It came to represent Africa's sovereignty over its own resources. The initiative cleared the path for regional collaboration, technological independence, and economic growth, in addition to resolving the water shortage. Ibrahim, although Traoré, is remembered as a leader who prevailed in the fight for independence in water. He saw this as only the start of a longer journey toward Africa's actual independence, one that would see them no longer alone.